Do you know what Queen Elizabeth I's favorite drink was? Yeah, neither did I. Not until I read Dr. Tammy Horn's book, How a Honeybee Shaped a Nation. Who doesn't love honey? And who knew that honey actually naturally comes in different flavors and different colors? My goal today is to inform you about the complexities of honey, including the origins, the flavors, types, and different uses for honey. I'm a third-year beekeeper. I've spent the last 2 winters researching everything bee-related. First, I'll explain how the honeybee came to America, and then we'll talk about some different types of honey, and finally, we'll discuss different uses for honey. Let's talk about origins. The honeybee is not a native species to America. In fact, it was brought over by the colonists. According to pages 15 and 16 of Dr. Horn's book, Queen Elizabeth I, remember the lady that loved mead, had a beekeeper. Her beekeeper was the first person to label a male honeybee as a drone. The name drone carried into the colonies and became synonymous with a poor and lazy person. Dr. Horn credits that word drone with causing the colonial writers to project an orderly and ideal hive. Was all organized, just like a hive. In America, industry is king, as we all know. That brings me to the second point about source. Did you know that it takes one honeybee an entire lifetime of industry to make 1 drop of honey? The nectar that a bee gathers will in turn flavor and color the honey, because each bloom source, each flower, each type of bloom has its own flavor and its own color. Region, also known as terroir to winemakers, also has an effect on honey. Only beekeepers who have their honey tested or who install their hives near an orchard with a specific type of, and if they have their honey tested in a lab, only they can prove what source their honey is from. My honey has to be labeled wildflower honey. Here it is. This is spring honey. You can see it's nice and light. If you guys would like to take a spoonful of that and just let it sit on your tongue and kind of dissolve, think about different words that you might use to describe the flavor and the texture. Some honey that you might find in the supermarket would better be labeled sugar syrup or diluted honey, because it's often cut with sugars. In fact, sometimes it's 100% sugar and water. And this is a practice that southernliving.com calls honey laundering. Special varieties of honey include Manuka. Manuka honey is a very expensive and prized honey from Australia, and it has many medicinal uses. Some other types are sourwood, linden, and basswood, as we call it in the States. Honey can also be obtained in different forms. Those include, what you have is kind of a creamed honey. Mine naturally does that for whatever reason. But you can obtain it in comb, liquid, and granulated forms, among others. In the last 20 years, honey tasting has become very popular, almost like wine tasting. C. Marina Marchesi uses special descriptor words to talk about honey. In her 2008 article in the American Mead Maker, she entitled her article, Honey, Different Flowers, Different Flavors. Some of the words that she uses evoke pleasant feelings: fruity, warm, fresh, things like that. Some of the other words that she uses, like gamey, animal, spoiled, those aren't as pleasant, are they? This is my spring honey. It tends to be very light. There are many varieties of honey. Some are better for certain uses. Okay, My brother's hive downstate tends to produce a dilly flavor, which is amazing on chicken. One of the common uses, of course, that we're talking about is cooking. According to the National Honey Board, the most popular recipes are cough syrup and chewy oatmeal cookies. Honey also has medicinal uses, as we talked about earlier. P.E. Lusby, A. Combs, J. M. Wilkinson, in their 2002 article, Honey, a Potent Agent for Wound Healing, in the Journal of Wound Ostomy and Continence Nursing, reported that honey even has antibacterial activity in vitro. So we've talked about how the bees came to America, we've explored different types, and finally talked about some of the uses. As you can see, honey is indeed a very complex substance. So are you wondering what might be next for me and my bees? Well, I hope to try my hand at mead making.